Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Arseholics podcast on a Thursday evening, 15th of June, well past the end of the season. This is the first recording we're doing since the season finished. Well, apart from the season review, the last game of the season review, rather. So this is that kind of like weird territory where we're not reviewing games, but we're talking about the madness that is the transfer window, which just opened this week. With me doing that, so obviously you've got me, Raj, and you've got Aaron in here with me. Hello, mate. You good?
Good evening. Yes, I am fantastic. How are you?
Good. I'm really, really looking forward to talking about transfers today because, firstly, we haven't recorded in a while. So I'm sorry for the, we should apologize to the diehard fans, right? Firstly, for that. Really sorry for depriving you of content. But it's probably worth having a little break and just, finish the season on a high. Second Champions League. Let's do this. We're going to have the music back at the Emirates. Awesome. And I think we knew at the end of the season that given Champions League, given the high that it ended, that this transfer window could be really interesting. Yeah, it was a window where clearly we've got a good young squad that even if you sign no one else are going to be better next season. And now it's about adding that quality. And all the sounds were like that was going to happen. And to do a sort of, I guess, a brief recap, in January, there was this random kind of interest which quickly manifested into a bid for Moises Caicedo towards the back end of the January transfer window. Kind of took everyone by surprise, right? And it was a fairly high value bid. Everyone was a bit like, what the hell? Because he hadn't joined Brighton that long ago and it was not for that much money. So it was like, geez, what's going on here? But then, that didn't happen. We ended up signing Jorginho instead. But clearly there was one, budget, and two, interest in, potentially getting a central midfielder like that. And from what we were hearing at the time, it was over and above this long-standing interest that we've sort of had in Declan Rice. And all the murmurings, even in January, were that if Arsenal get to the Champions League in the summer, then Declan Rice was going to be number one target. And today, it's just felt a bit like deadline day, hasn't it, mate? Because the window opened like a few days ago. So I think we envisaged that, some proper bids were going to go in, and West Ham finished the Conference League final the other day. So like there was all this talk about, well, Arsenal would only actually bid for Rice after that happened. And today it's just been a flurry of shit. I mean, could you summarize? Let's go sequentially. So let's go. We'll do Declan Rice and Caicedo kind of, sort of sequentially, but together. And maybe we do the other big story that is Kai Havertz afterwards. But can you just talk us through what has happened today with regards to Rice and Caicedo?
Okay. Where do I start? So I think, look, we live in an age now where transfers are just different nowadays, right? Like Declan Rice, we've been talking about this for almost a year. Right, like even when in January when we were talking about, is it Caicedo or Caicedo? You say it very, very continentally.
How do you say it?
I say Caicedo.
See, I'm one of those people. I think I know the real proper way of saying it, and then I find that's completely wrong. And to be honest, let's go with you because you were right on Lopetegui. Do you remember? And like Myers and I were like, you idiot! It's not Lopetegui, you clown.
What did you say it was?
Like Le Petitgout or something, or no, like something like this, Le Petitgout or something. And you were like, no, it's like Lopetegui. We're like, where does "gi" come from?
Yeah,
you were right. You were right.
Fully continental. No, I don't know. Right, let's call him Caicedo because that's what I've said.
Okay.
Look, we've been like even in January we were bidding for him, and I'm sure we discussed this at the time. We were like, well, what does this mean for our bid for Declan Rice in the summer? We were talking about January. In January, our bid for a player in the summer. Like that didn't happen 4 or 5 years ago, right? Like 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, like 7, 8 years ago. Remember Sol Campbell? No one knew about Sol Campbell back in the day. He just rocked up. And it was like,
but that was iconic, right? That's the poster child of that. That will never happen again. Ever in the history of football will never happen again.
That was probably nothing hits that level of like complete unknown transfer. But look, about these things way before. Agents talk a lot of nonsense these days, and the hardest part about the breaking news culture of transfers nowadays is just figuring out the nonsense from the truth, and you've got to kind of filter through various Twitter accounts, some of them just there getting clicks, some of them just regurgitating content from someone else, and to this day, like, nothing hits like a David Ornstein tweet, right? So let's caveat everything we discussed today with, we have no idea what's happening, right? Yeah. We go off the same stuff that people read online, the same tweets, the same sources of information that everyone else has, and we're just guessing, right? But what looks like has happened is 2 bids have gone in from Declan Rice. One, was it this morning? Am I making that up? One this morning, so, yeah. And then another one around 7 p.m. today. So it's the 15th of June now.
And the murmurings before the first bid, right, was that the first bid was going to happen. Personal terms are all sort of sorted. The clubs have been talking. There's understanding about the value, expectations. And then that first bid happened, didn't it?
Yeah, and that was like a long time coming, right? Everyone was like, okay, we've got to wait for West Ham to deal with the Conference League. We can't do anything till the Conference League. Then the Conference League happened. West Ham won it. Congratulations to them. And then we were like, okay, what happens now? It's like a bit of a soap opera, right? And then the bid went in this morning. Another bid that got rejected quickly. News seemed to break that got rejected pretty quickly. And then around 7 o'clock UK time, there was a bit of news that another bid has gone in, and we're waiting to hear what's going on. Now, in parallel to that, there were murmurings that another club or clubs were or still are interested in Declan Rice, and a bid may or may not be coming from Manchester City. I know Chelsea were talked about, but it doesn't look like that. And even last week, there were talks about Bayern Munich, but that seems to have cooled as well. In parallel to that, we heard that this interest in Caicedo has now gone. Like, are no longer interested. I never really believed many of those rumors that we were in for him this summer, because it didn't conceptually make sense that we could be in for 2 very, very talented, expensive players. But
so did you think, therefore, in January, when we very publicly seemed to, want him, and that seemed to totally legit, right? Because Caicedo even came out. Yeah. And publicly did a get me out, please. It was one of those, I've given my service to Brighton. This is life changing for my family. Let me go. So that's how. So you're suggesting that although that was real, if we had got him in January, you don't think we would have pursued Rice?
Well, I don't know, but I guess my gut feel was, could we really afford 2 90 million plus midfielders in the space of one season, right? January and then the summer. But look, this is a new Arsenal, right? We will probably sell players this summer, and we can talk about that either today or another day, but we don't really know how much money we have. We don't know what level of income and what kind of financial circumstances we're playing in now, right? Because we now have Champions League money. We finished second. We probably did quite well financially from prize money and TV rights last season. And Kroenke seems to be investing more and more each year. There are a lot of positive vibes coming out of the club for what we expect to do this summer. So I think we have to sort of reset our expectations a bit, which is, and we don't know what level this club is going to go to. Right, we know we're not a Man City, right? We know we're not going to go and buy 5 50 million plus players in one window, right? We know that. But I get the vibe that for the right players, we are prepared to go and spend a serious amount of money and break our transfer record, which I believe is still 75 million for Pepe, right? So that we were prepared to go very, very high for Mudryk in January. We were prepared to go, I can't remember how high the bids for Caicedo got to, but 75 million, I think, was around what we got to. So the money was there, right? And yes, we spent it on Trossard and Jorginho, but that was, probably 20% of the cost that we were prepared to outlay in January. And look, let's see. I don't know. I think it's very hard to make financial predictions of how much money we actually have to spend. And in reality, we've talked about this before. It's not really like, Arsenal have a bank account with 200 million sitting in it, and they're like, okay, this is how much we can spend, and we can spend it till the bank account is empty, right? It's a lot more complicated than that. Deals are structured over 5-6 years. There's like amortization, there's accounting, there's sales, there's image rights, there's all sorts of like complexities of football accounting that you and I are nowhere near qualified enough to talk about. But I think it's clear that there is money and we're doing okay financially now. So maybe we can go for 2 big players, but I've always felt that maybe it's the old, the Arsene Wenger accountant in me thinking that feels like it was a bit too much. What do you think?
I go back to something that you said before. I think you were sort of alluding to the fact that we need to sort of get used to a little bit of a new age. Maybe I've had loads of conversations today on WhatsApp with various groups of people and talking about, is X player worth it? Is Y player worth it? Can you see this club spending all this money in one window, FFP, all this sorts of stuff? So first and foremost, I think setting the scene with all of that stuff is really important to understand maybe what Arsenal may be doing. And again, this is just my thoughts, not like I have any inside knowledge of any shape, way or form. But if you think about the Cronkies right now, they are on cloud 9. They think they've got the Midas touch, right? They've just won the NBA with the Denver Nuggets. Over the last 2 years, 2023, 23 and 22, they've won it. They've just won with the Denver Nuggets. The LA Rams won the Super Bowl. Their lacrosse franchise won lacrosse. Colorado Avalanche, which are they the NHL team? But basically, the NHL team won as well. So they've won 4 of their franchises have won their ultimate trophies in the last 2 years, right? And their football team just finished second. Their football team, their soccer team, Arsenal, who they had faith in this young coach who, finished 8th a couple of seasons ago, question marks, whatever. They kept faith in him. He has delivered a season where they finished second to the best team in the world, the team that have just gone and done the treble, this kind of absolute super club with, 10 million charges of cheating against them. They if you are the Cronkies right now, you're thinking, we are doing everything right. We know exactly what we're doing. And you also probably feel like, do you know what? If Arteta and Edu really think that they want this player, if they really think this is the right idea, then cash-wise, we will do what we can to support them. So it's important, I think, to put that in context, cash-wise. So I think Arsenal still have a decent cash balance, but you've got owners who clearly have cash. I think they'd be willing to do that. Also, we're living in an era where transfers are financed in a very complex way, which I think you alluded to. Now, I know, working at an investment bank, I do know that our bank, and many other banks are entering this world, it's a fairly new business of entering worlds where the investment banks finance football transfers. So clubs will approach these banks to say, we want to sign this player? Can we structure a deal on these terms, etc.? And banks actually get involved in that. They didn't used to do that. So that in itself is pretty interesting. And I think what that reflects is that as long as clubs think they can stay within FFP, they're willing to make a lot of financial moves. They're willing to pull levers. I think the expectation of the appreciation of your club's worth is very acknowledged by owners, and I think they feel like being able to sort of pump cash in or do financial deals, take loans, etc., to improve your squad, to try and increase the value of your club, get your club performing better, and that goodwill in terms of accounting terms that you generate for the club's value, I think they think is worth it financially. So that's that. So going to the FFP point, I think that signing 2 big 90 million pound midfielders or whatever it is, it's actually okay if you've got the cash and they're around 23, 24 years old, because at the end of the day, you're signing them for that much. they're going to have a long contract. We know how players are accounted for. The fees and their wages are basically spread across the course of a contract. So you sign them for, say, a 5-year contract. That 90 million is spread across that 5 years in the books, as are the wages spread across that 5 years. If you extend the contract, you get to spread the remainder across that period. And if you sell, you get to kind of, it goes the other way. So when you sell the player, you might make and again, if you're at this age, there's every chance that, if you sign a Declan Rice or a Caicedo, they do really well or whatever. And then say if they want to leave Arsenal at 27, 28, you might make your money back. You might make more, you might make a bit less, but financially, it probably all doesn't feel as harsh as on the face of it, spending 90 million on 2 players sounds, if you get what I mean. So I guess that's a long way of saying that the notion that we would spend this money on 2 players, on a Caicedo and a Rice, that doesn't surprise me. I don't think that was hard to believe. And I think particularly that the money was there in January that clearly we were willing to do with Caicedo. And I clearly think Rice was always a target. I think they've sort of budgeted for bringing 2 central midfielders of that sort of worth in, mate. I don't know. Do you agree with that?
If you look at the dream, we're probably selling Kroenke, right? Like, we're delivering on the promises that we made, and that's what Arteta will be saying to Kroenke and Edu and whoever else, which is like, hey, look, a year ago, 2 years ago, I asked for £50 million to sign Ben White. I asked for 30 million quid to sign Aaron Ramsdale. Like, I asked from, I mean, we had Saliba, but like we've gone and like made some big signings, like 45 million for Gabriel Jesus or whatever. Like, it's not like we haven't spent. And the story would have been, look, if we invest in this team, it will deliver success, and that success will be returned financially. And look, we've gone and like finished second in the league, or, but barring a bit of a disaster, we could have won it. And now our financial situation is far, far healthier, and we're now getting significantly more money. Because I think you look at like TV money for Europa League, you probably get like, I think 15, 20 million, 25 million if you get close to winning it. If you get to like the semi-finals of the Champions League, you get something like 80, 90 million. It's like, that's like 60 million pounds. Like, and again, I know it's not like you put that in the bank account and go and buy a player, but that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money, yeah. It's cash as well, isn't it? It's literally cash.
It's money that comes in, right? And like, even if Stan Kroenke is looking at this from a purely financial perspective, he has seen like, look, I gave this lots of money. Now this club is worth more than it was 2 years ago. And Arteta's probably saying, look, give us the money, back us again. And we can then go from being, sometimes qualifying for the Champions League to a regular Champions League team, the team that's pushing for the league, pushing for major trophies. And all of that comes with like commercial deals, commercial benefits. And even if you ignore the sporting context, it properly stacks up from a business case point of view. But look, I think, we don't know what to expect. I think that's the main thing, right? So I'll just read out the question now from Ryan, which says, if we had 200 million, is 170 million wise for 2 DMs. We have gaps on the right, striker and defense. And I mean, we do have gaps, right? But
I put this up there. And the reason I put this up there while you're talking, I think it plays, Ryan's point here plays quite well to the point that we're discussing. And I think that, my opinion anyway, to you, Ryan, your question, but I think Arsenal fans generally is, I think we need to stop looking at windows as I wonder how much money we've got to spend. And I don't know if it comes from partly a mainstream media culture where they kind of say, oh, this club's got a war chest, 100 million war chest this summer or whatever. Or also, I played Championship Manager, Football Manager myself for, decades. And, you start your season and it's always like, oh, the board gives you 80 million as your budget. Now, I think in these days, in particular, I don't think it works like that at all. I think every single transfer is judged on its merit. It's almost like a net present value analysis and a kind of a genuine financial deep dive is done on every single deal. That every deal is going to be judged on its merit. So if I take an example, I think, for example, a club may not be willing to spend 150 million in a window on a bunch of 27-year-old players, but a set of the same set of owners may pull the right financial levers to spend 300 million on a bunch of elite 24-year-olds, right? And I think that we've probably got to think about that in that context. I think about it. The only reason I think, Ryan's point around, if you have a certain amount of money, I think the only reason that comes into play a little bit is when you're talking about it from an FFP perspective. So if we know for a fact, or if the club is in a situation where we know that because of the wage bill, because of the amount of outlay that we spent over a number of seasons, we genuinely have a certain restriction, then I think it's more of a case of, should we really do this if we've got a gap on the right and a striker in defence and all that kind of stuff? But otherwise, I think Arsenal is sort of in a position right now where FFP, everything's kind of okay. I think it's all right. And they're able to judge transfers on their kind of individual merit and financial kind of merits, if you like. Aaron, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. The other thing that always annoys me about transfer windows, and people say like this team won the window or this team didn't spend enough, is more that people forget about the wages. You always forget about the wages. And look, we could easily spend, money on Caicedo because he was on something like I know he signed a new contract in January, but before that, he was on something like 20k a week or something ridiculous. Now you take the opposite, for a bit of fun in our WhatsApp group, we were joking about could we sign Mbappe, right? Mbappe is on something like 600k a week in euros on his current contract. So even if we signed him for 20 million, we still can't afford Mbappe. We can't afford to play anyone. Maybe we could, if we stretched it and it's Mbappe, and this is getting a bit silly now, but we can't really afford to pay someone 700k a week if we needed to, right? Because that is, the course of a 5-year deal, another 40-50 million quid.
Yeah,
right?
But I think in that example with an Mbappe, I actually think it's more of a case where if Mbappe turned round and said, I want to join Arsenal, that's the club I want to go to, I do think the Kroenkes would somehow make it work financially, because you think about all of the kind of benefits that you get from signing him. You think about all the kind of commercial benefits you get from signing, arguably, the sort of one of the Messi Ronaldo incumbents, if you like, right? I think our biggest issue in signing someone like Mbappe is the fact that Mbappe wouldn't come to us over all these other clubs, right?
Okay, but you get my point, right?
I totally get what your point is.
The wages, people talk about Haaland, they're like, Haaland only costs 50-60 million. Yeah, but he's on 300-400k a week, plus all the dodgy add-ons that City have given his family, and the increase in wages and bonuses and stuff. There's so much the football industry is just not transparent at all this stuff, right? We have a inkling with the fees, and sometimes, and even Arsenal, they never say we paid 45 million for this player. They say we signed him on an undisclosed fee, and the agents leak the number that they want to leak, right? And we never know wages, because again, I would love it if wages were public, but they're just not. So look, all we can do is guess. We can do some accurate guessing, and we can kind of get a feel, which is okay, are we going to sign 4 or 5 90 million pound players in one window? Probably not, right? I think we can say with certainty we're not going to do that. But can we sign 2 top quality players this summer if we need to? Maybe, because actually with our squad, it probably means that we don't then need to go and sign another 90 million pound player in another window. We can probably make do.
That's
and
the
just
logic,
incrementally add to this squad, because this squad will keep getting better every year.
That's it. That's the logic, because that's also the argument where people say, when people criticize Man City spending, a lot of the people who defend Man City turn around and say, but if you look at it, over the last couple of years, net spend, Man City haven't been that bad compared to the other clubs. The thing is, you have to spend a lot of money to get your side good. When that side is good or very good, like Man City have been for the last few years, whatever, your net spend always decreases, because you never have, all your backup players that you sell are good. So you get money for them. They're also probably decorated, Yeah. So like, they're high value guys. And you only tend to need to buy 1-2 people in the window. Or if you've got some top talent with a small release clause, they probably want to come to you anyway. So you get someone like a Julian Alvarez who City don't have to spend that much on. Everyone's like, what a steal. See what they did there. Yeah, mate, there would have been about 30 clubs wanting to sign him, but he's going to Man City because they're really good. So when you're really good, you benefit from that. So yeah, like I totally agree with you. I mean, should we, Aaron, and now just talk about the players themselves that we've and these deals individually. So Declan Rice, like you summarized, allegedly 2 bids went in today. There was first that got rejected, and then there was this other one, which I think you were the one who told me about that. I couldn't actually see, the people I usually follow on Twitter. I didn't actually see it, but you were suggesting a bid of something, was it like 91 million and
91
and 10 million?
plus 10 was the rumors that I've seen.
So that's 91 million plus an additional 10 extra as opposed
in
to
add-ons.
90.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And okay, interesting. So actually, I wanted to ask you, did it surprise you that the first bid was rejected, given what we've been told is that talks have been ongoing for ages? Even when Ornstein reported that the first bid had got rejected, he was like, talks have been going between Edu and hierarchy at West Ham, and Tim Lewis was talking to Karen Brady at the PL AGM. Like, do you know what I mean? All of these chats are going on. So did it surprise you that we put in a bid that got rejected?
I don't know, man. I think we don't really know how these negotiations work in real life, right? It's not like you're buying a car or something. Maybe it is like you're buying a car or buying a house. In the fact that your opening bid is never like the one you really want to pay, but you're just kind of testing the water, opening negotiations. I think what kind of frustrates me sometimes is that it seems like for these deals, the bids get reported so quickly. Like, I know with the second bid, there's some ambiguity about whether it's gone in, when it went in. Like, and even the first one, did it go in today? Did it go in yesterday? How like up to date is the reporting? But like, I think it's like when you're at the level where you're analyzing every bid, I think it's very hard to compare because so many of the players that we've bought, we've probably bid 5 or 6 times for some of these players. Like, remember Thomas Partey? We must have bid for him about 10 times, and then eventually we were like, sod it, let's just pay the release clause.
That was, yeah.
And look, I think personally, I do think we haven't really demonstrated the ability to do these big money deals in terms of execution. And there's reasons we've walked away, and they're all valid reasons. And we discussed this in depth in January, which was like, should we have gone to like 100 million for Mudryk? Should we have gone to like 80, 90 million? Or did we even, actually with Caicedo, Brighton were like, he's not for sale, and we just kept bidding, right? Like, I think there is a bit of pressure on the Arsenal hierarchy to make sure this deal gets done, because if he does go to Man City, I mean, it depends why and how, but that would be very, I think, embarrassing for Edu, because like we said at the start, this is a deal that we've been talking about for over a year. Like, it seems like we've got the player on board. It seems like we've invested a lot of time. I'm sure Arteta's probably called him up a few times, maybe even had dinner with him, who knows. And now it's just a case of like, you've got kind of a gentleman's agreement that this is going to happen. You just need to make it happen. And clubs do come in at last minute. Like Mudryk, it seemed like it's a very similar story. We were linked with him for a very long time, and then all of a sudden Chelsea come in and we're in a bidding war, and then we lose out. So there is some rumors that the reason the second bid has gone in so quickly, again, I stress rumors, was that we're worried that this could become a bidding war. And again, I've seen rumors, and I stress just rumors, that Man City might bid tomorrow or something like that. But no, we have to get it done. I think he's a player I really, really like. I've always admired him. I think it'll be very, very interesting to see how we set up with him in our side next season. But look, I think we just need, he's a quality player. He's probably going to be an England captain one day, maybe even a shout for Arsenal captain one day. And we just need to go and get it done. Once you're in, like, this is this is new territory for us, right? Like when was the last time we went in for one of the top young English talents in the Premier League? Like,
Yeah.
we just don't get involved in deals like this, right? Because this probably will be the biggest deal that happens this summer across the Premier League. Unless Man United get taken over by Qatari investors and go and buy Mbappe, like this is going to be the biggest deal, right? So this is we've got to put our big boy pants on. We've got to act like a big club and get it done, because once you're in, you're so far down the line, you can't lose out.
Agree with you. Totally agree with everything you said. He is, like you say, arguably, on a par with anyone in his position in the world in terms of his skill set. And he's, been described as a really unique midfielder as well, who plays in this role for West Ham in a really sort of deep role. But the way everyone sort of who seems to play with Declan Rice and have coached Declan Rice, all the analysts seem to suggest that he does that role at a world-class level, but he can do so much more. It's just that that's what West Ham need him to do. But he could be a more progressive midfielder. He's got literally everything. So with that in mind, mate, why do you think it is that, at least in terms of all of the preparation, all the kind of rumors we've heard since January, apparently we've been putting the hours in. Why is it that seemingly we've had a free run at that? Why is it that Arsenal have been the front runners for all this time? And even now, even with the rumors about Man City lurking, and I saw another rumor that Chelsea might be lurking and other clubs might be lurking or whatever. Why is that all happening now? And why do you think none of that seemed to be happening before?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's obviously the personal side of things, and this is an advantage that Arsenal have that we don't talk about anywhere near enough, which is we're in London, right? Like one of the best cities in the world to live in, especially if you're a very, very rich young man in his 20s. And we have that inherent geographical advantage over other clubs, right? Like, this is something that I reckon Newcastle will struggle with at some point, and they'll probably have to overpay some players because, would you rather be on, I don't know, 120k a week at Arsenal or 150k a week living in Newcastle? Like, I reckon a lot of, foreign players will say, I just want to come and live in London because
it's true.
They can party, it's international.
I mean, it's not even the partying element, isn't it? Because people talk about how the families of footballers play a massive, massive deal, right? So you've got the wives, you've got the girlfriends who are like, I don't want to go to Newcastle, I want to go London.
Yeah, because it's international, they can settle in. I'm sure I've told you this before, but I've got a friend who is in a wives and girlfriends club with a bunch of Brazilian footballers, right? So they have their own communities, and there's a big Brazilian international footballer community in London. Like Willian hangs out with Gabriel Jesus, Edu hangs out with a bunch of the older retired players. And it's all it's a community. I don't think you have a Brazilian wives and girlfriends community in Newcastle. Maybe it's Guimaraes.
I was going to say. Is Joe Linton? Is Joe Linton Brazilian? Right, yeah. So, those two hanging out.
Yeah. So, and I don't know. I don't think Sunderland have any Brazilians that they can just work with. All of these little things.
It's a really good point.
Help us. And I did see that apparently, again, all these rumors, I don't know if they're true, but Chelsea were in for him a while ago, but there were personal circumstances which they just messed up, and they did something that upset his family. Whereas Arsenal made a very family friendly bid to him. His family is pitched the dream of stay in London, move your family here. This is a club where you can settle and grow and all that stuff. So I think we're getting better at that. I think actually another factor is Mikel Arteta. I think he's at the stage of his career now where actually players do want to come and play for him. And I think he's not Pep, obviously. And, Wenger did this so many times back in the day. He'd just pick up the phone and say, come and play for me, and sell them the dream. And I think Arteta's getting quite good at that. I think players will see what this young team did last season, the way he's improved so many young players. the vibe of this team, the kind of young, brave, fearless team that we've put together. And if you're a player in 22, 23, thinking about where do I want to spend my 5-year contract at the peak, you probably want to come and do it at Arsenal. It's a very, very attractive proposition. I think Mikel Arteta will, very stable. It's not Chelsea, right? You look at what happened to Chelsea last season, and of course they probably will stabilize at some point, unfortunately. But Chelsea is a club that has a new manager every 2 years. And yes, you could be in with the manager now, but who knows what the manager is going to be like at the end of the season? Who knows what the manager is going to be like in 2 years' time? And it's genuinely bonkers why players would sign a 7-year contract at Chelsea. I mean, actually, it's not that bonkers. They get paid a lot of money to do that. But if you're looking at it from a career point of view, I don't think Chelsea's attractive. But yeah, we're a really good story right now, and I think that really, really helps us, especially when you're aware of what the Arsenal story is. You live in London, you probably get vibes when you've grown up and spent a lot of time in London. I reckon that's probably what did it. And let's see. We've got to get it done. As Ryan says, if this is the main target, I say pay the money and do it fast. No need to waste time. West Ham will sell to the highest bidder if someone else comes in, and that's true, right? If Man City come and offer 130, 140 million. We're going to have a problem.
Yeah.
I don't know if they need. I don't know if they need Declan Rice, but this is Man City. They've just won a treble. They're also a very attractive proposition right now.
Yeah, and you know what? Similarly, like Pep, similar to Arteta, you don't really know tactically what they're thinking about for the next season. And this is what I think is quite important as well when you look at the sort of players that Arsenal seem to be targeting alongside Rice, is that when you look at the beginning of the season just gone, no one thought we were shaping up with Ben White at right back and Granit Xhaka in this progressed kind of box 8 role. No one thought that was going to happen. So in the same way, I think at the moment are thinking about our team. We're thinking, we signed Rice and he fits into this role and so in this role. But actually, I've got no idea what Arteta is actually going to do next season, and I think Pep's sort of the same, because a part of me sort of thinking, why would Pep want Rice? He's got Rodri, he's got, I mean, they might get rid of Calvin Phillips, but the thing is, this is quite one of my mates. He said he sort of made a point. He said he can see Calvin Phillips going to West Ham to replace Declan Rice, and that. I hope that doesn't come into play. And I don't, if Pep
honestly,
makes a massive...
there's irony in that himself. If you're Declan Rice, you're probably thinking well, what if I'm the next Calvin Phillips?
I agree. I agree.
I loved Calvin Phillips when he was at Leeds. I thought he was fantastic. And he's gone there, and he's still a fantastic player, I think. And wherever he goes next, I think he'll do really, really well. And any club, I think, will do very well to get him. He's probably thinking, well, hang on a sec, I might not play every game. And I mean, I know at City, no one plays every game, but you want to be I think if you're Declan Rice, you want to be that number one. You want to be one of the main guys in the team. And I think that's another dream that Arteta will be selling, is you could be the main guy in this midfield for the next 6, 7, 8, 9 years, if you really wanted to.
I think I'll also say that, that as well as the fact that he's young enough that after a couple of years, after 2-3 years, if Arsenal aren't really progressing, if we're not looking like we're going to be able to challenge for the major trophies, he's still young enough to get that move to Man City or to Real Madrid or to whoever it is.
Yeah, but do you think? I don't think Arteta's telling. He might be thinking.
I'm just telling that, but yeah, exactly. Yeah, but, I agree.
Yeah, he's probably realizing. Yeah, look, this isn't the move of my life. I'm not 27, 28, where my next contract is going to be my final one. But equally, this is a place where you will be loved. And I think players are all very, very different. Some players are more mature. Some people go for the vibe. Some people love a challenge. Some people love stability. Some people want the team built around them. Some people would hate, being in another team with another ego and they're another big, big player around them. And I think the types of players that we're going for are also it's very clear that we're not, Yeah, I don't think we'll ever sign a Ronaldo type, for example, like a big ego of, we're building a team of good boys, right? And I know, Graham Souness took the piss out of us because we're a team of son-in-laws or whatever it was, but like you look at Saka, you look at Odegaard, you look at Martinelli, you look at Ben White, you look at Saliba, like these are young players, confident, technically good, but also players who seem like their head is screwed on, players who behave themselves, player who has discipline, players who I'm sure let loose at times, but actually, I saw an interesting tweet say actually a lot of our players now are 24, 25 and having their first kid and getting married. Like apparently Arteta's pushing the family life on them.
Yeah, I saw that tweet as well, because even I think our assistant coach got married as well.
Yeah, exactly. Just convincing all these 23, 24-year-olds to have kids. I think I saw Ramsdale's missus is pregnant now. So look, this is it's all part of the story, and I think this matters to some players. And if Declan Rice wants, that matters to him. I'm not sure where he is in his family life, and this is going really deep now. I'm not going to start speculating on when he's going to have kids and stuff, but all this stuff might really appeal to him.
Completely agree. I think the Chelsea stuff I find really interesting, because it felt like before there were strong, when Arsenal started being interested, the rumours came. I don't think anyone really took it seriously, and then all of a sudden it became the thing, and it became that, well, Arsenal are really interested and it's going to happen. But I think before that, everyone thought he was going to go back to Chelsea, and I always found that interesting, because obviously he was released by Chelsea. So I always feel that if a club have released you, you probably don't want to go back. There's probably something that means that you don't want to go back there. But then there was this thing about him being best friends with Mason Mount, and the idea of them getting to play together would be a dream for two best friends. But now Mason Mount is leaving, and that kind of it was sort of there's been suggestions that Mason Mount's future has been tied in somewhat to Declan Rice's future to go to Chelsea. I personally can't see that being such a big pull. Like, I can't imagine him going to Chelsea just because of Mason Mount. But I still do find it interesting that we seemingly aren't that maybe Man United or even Liverpool haven't been really battling for this in the same way that it feels like we've been really going for it. But it might, like you say, it may be because the work was done very early. He really wanted to stay in London, and that was that. I mean, what's your feeling? Do you think this transfer will happen?
Yeah. I think we're too invested in this now. And actually, I think what might happen is we end up potentially overpaying to get it done.
I agree. Do you think it's because would you think it'll look embarrassing if we don't get it done now?
Yeah. I think because actually Man City probably won't go, and they've shown like very sensible restraint in transfer dealings. So I don't think Man City will go over, but actually if Arsenal have to go over, we probably will. And actually, if you're I'm surprised this doesn't happen more often, which is if your rival is going to spend big. Like, I'm surprised other clubs just don't bid just to make them overpay more. Like if you're Man City, you're just like, let's just throw in another 10 million and make Arsenal go and bid another 20 million. So that means they can't go and then buy another midfielder because they've overpaid by 20 million, right?
But is your concern not that West Ham go, okay, cool, we accept your bid?
Yeah, fine. But like I'm sure there are tactical ways of playing it. I'm sure agents say, actually, could we just put out a story saying Man City are interested because we know Arsenal will shit themselves. But look, I think a lot with these big money deals, I think the landing zone is generally known well in advance. They agree the personal terms. They've probably had very frequent discussions with West Ham saying that this is what we've got. Is this okay? I don't think we bid without knowing that there's a realistic chance of getting the player like this early on. When it's when it's deadline day and we're throwing bids out for
you never know.
Who's at Douglas Luiz and all that stuff, or we're just chucking an extra million every hour. That is a bit more chaotic. But this seems like it's been part of the plan. And usually those things tend to work out for us.
Agreed.
But the jury's out. Let's see.
Agree. And are you disappointed with the rumors about Caicedo that seemingly we have dropped our interest? And do you like this is incredibly speculative, but what I was about to say is, if we have dropped our interest in him, do you see us going for another central midfielder of that type of profile?
I would love us to sign another midfielder, because I think central midfielders now are like probably the most important players in terms of the way the game is played. Like, you look at Arsenal with Thomas Partey, you look at Arsenal without Thomas Partey, especially before Jorginho rocked up, like it was night and day. And they're really, really hard to find. So like Liverpool signed McAllister again. They've been trying for almost a year to sign him. That was another one that you kind of felt for like the last 3 months. Everyone was like, yeah, he's going to Liverpool.
Yeah.
So, and I don't even think McAllister's that good, if I'm being honest. He's like a decent, tidy player, but I've like seen from a few Brighton fans, they think like he's just a bit like he's quite easily replaceable. Whereas with Caicedo, they're like, this guy is like bloody quality. So let's see. I hope we get it done. I would love another midfielder. I think that would also impact who we sell and who we let go and what happens to the midfielders we do have. Because we've still got Jorginho, Xhaka, all that stuff, but him having a deal agreed, that's gone quiet a bit recently.
Well, allegedly it's because that's all done, but we're Arsenal waiting to sign someone before we let him go.
Yeah, and that
allegedly,
hopefully that was, well, not hopefully, but you would assume that's 1 in, 1 out, rather than we're going to sign 2 midfielders and then we'll let you go.
Yeah, exactly.
So let's see. I'm optimistic. The day we get that done, I'll be really, really happy, because I think he's a really good player.
Agreed.
And fingers crossed we get it done.
Agreed. We haven't talked about the transfer that really came out of nowhere, because the two that we've talked about now, they've been bubbling, as we've said, from January, and in Rice's case, maybe a little even prior to that. But no one anywhere was talking about Kai Havertz to Arsenal. No one anywhere was talking about Kai Havertz to Arsenal. And what we understand over the last 24 hours is it's not just a little bit of interest. It sounds like the clubs are actively negotiating. Arsenal have been allowed to either speak directly to Havertz or, through representatives. Whatever's happened seems to suggest Havertz wants to come to Arsenal. Personal terms have progressed. There's, apparently that's not an issue. So that bit's all almost done. And this is just a fee situation. And I think there's some further interesting points where some people are saying that Chelsea really want to sell Havertz before the 30th of June because it is going to impact their FFP ratios. They basically need to get someone off their books of that kind of level. And they want to get it done quickly. Arsenal are happy to try and get it done quickly. Sounds like Chelsea have been, recall Chelsea signed the guy for almost £90 million. Like, it was a deal rising to like £90 million. I don't know the structure of it, but that's a massive wad of cash, right? And seemingly, they obviously, he's a 24-year-old footballer. He's a German international. He has, not had a good season at Chelsea. And any Chelsea fan I know and have spoken to, even a guy today at the gym he always kind of tends to interrupt my workout for about 5 to 10 minutes, just rant about something. And he did today again. But he's just like, he thinks Havertz is awful. He thinks he's terrible. He's like, I can't believe Arsenal won him. But anyway, all that in mind, Chelsea want a high fee. Apparently, they want around 70 million. Apparently, Arsenal don't want to go near 70 million. Real Madrid apparently have been interested, but won't pay even 50 million. And the murmurings that seem to be, I don't know what you've heard, but the murmurings seem to be that Arsenal are quite willing to sort of play in that 50 to 60 million range, and something could happen around that. I mean, okay, like, firstly, how surprised are you with it, and how do you feel about the prospect of us signing Kai Havertz?
I have mixed feelings. I think what's the word? The Arsenal fan that was brought up in the the Wenger era, probably gets quite excited about a young technical midfielder attacker, like the Nasri Khleb type. I know he's a bit different, but that kind of like, he's very clearly like a gifted technical player. And I think we discussed this in WhatsApp in our group chat, which was, I like the idea of like a manager unlocking someone's potential. And he clearly has that potential, which is why Chelsea paid 90 million for him. I was a big fan. I really enjoyed watching him. I watched him a surprising amount for like, I don't watch a lot of like German football in general, but I remember that season watching Leverkusen quite a bit. And I remember thinking this guy is like ridiculous. They must have been in the Champions League that year as well, and he did really well there. And when I watched him at Chelsea, I just didn't really get him. I didn't really know why. And it's really hard to analyze a player when they're at Chelsea, especially last season, where everything was a mess. Like literally every player that went into that team, went into that system, the multiple managers, they just couldn't make it work, right? So last season is very hard to analyze. And, I think we've looked at it when he played under Tuchel, was it? Where he played pretty well. But on the downside, this is a player who's come from 90 million into the Premier League and hasn't been able to consistently deliver in the Premier League. I think that's fair to say that. He's had good moments. He's had good games, scored a Champions League final. But he hasn't consistently been like that guy that solves Chelsea's problems. And, we could argue where's his right position, what does he do best? But whatever he's done, he hasn't been able to make it work.
Agreed.
So this is a risky signing. I think that's fair to say. Especially it's a risky signing if you pay a lot of money. Because unlike if you sign a 50 million pound player from the Bundesliga, or even like you say, let's say 50 million pound for Mudryk, you kind of, he's stepping up a level, the player's stepping up, and you kind of think, can he do it at that level? Havertz has had 2 years or 3 years at Chelsea where he hasn't taken that chance. And when I watch him now, I think he does sometimes lack that intensity and that consistency to really like drive and own a game. It's a bit like Ozil in that sense, in the sense that like Ozil's very good. And I'm not saying Havertz is Ozil, but there were times where you were like, well, what are you doing? Like, why are you not like doing the stuff that you're really good at? And I reckon that's probably why Chelsea fans are probably quite frustrated. They're just like, what is this guy doing? Like, he's quality player. We know he's quality, but he just doesn't do it all the time. And maybe the only thing I think is maybe he's a type of player that, some players don't want to be that guy. They don't want to, there's some players that you don't build a team around, right? They are the guy that you put behind the guy that you built the team around in that sense, right? And maybe this Arsenal team where he might just be the 13th or 14th guy in the team, and we build a team of like 20 where you actually have 20 players who can interchange and play 15, 20 games a season. Maybe that's the role that will actually bring out the best in him. And he could just be a really, really good supporting act. A bit like Mahrez for City, which is like, Mahrez is a very good player, right? And he will score big goals, but he doesn't start every week for City. But then that when Mahrez comes on, you can play him for 5 games in a row, and you'll be cool with that, and he'll deliver. And then you can just take him out again because you'll have one bad game, and that's okay because you've got Bukayo Saka, because you've got Martinelli, you've got Trossard, you've got Odegaard, you've got Declan Rice, all these players around him who just, well, there's less pressure on him to be that main man in the team. Yeah. I think it depends on the fee. What do you think?
I think that it makes sense for a lot of reasons. As much as it is a bit left field, and there's always going to be the concern about the fact that he had such a poor season, the one just gone, but for so many reasons that you've just articulated, mainly about the fact that the Chelsea was just an absolute mess over the last year. It's very hard to really hold any of those players accountable. But let's look at it this way, right? He is a very two-footed player. I think he's predominantly left-footed, but he's incredibly two-footed. Prior to Chelsea, he played a lot in those right-hand areas, whether it was for Leverkusen or even Germany or the German kind of youth teams. He was playing in that kind of right half space, right wing, which makes me feel Arteta would have looked at that and gone, brilliant. He can rotate with Bukayo, because we know Arteta wants a left footer playing on that side, and Saka needs someone who can take minutes from him, so he's got that. But he's also got, Havertz, who seemingly Havertz's best position, or the position that he seems to have excelled in the most, is at number 10, where you sort of, I guess, originally started playing for Chelsea, but doesn't necessarily seem to get as many minutes as number 10 as he would like, because he's been played more as a number 9 at Chelsea this season. Germany seem to play him as a central striker as well sometimes. But he certainly feels like a guy that can play in a lot of the positions that Arteta likes to try and rotate in. Clearly, even with Odegaard, we were very lucky last season, so lucky that Odegaard and Saka just stayed pretty injury free. But in Havertz, you probably got a guy who can play in both of those sort of roles. Now, one would argue, yes, look, there's lots of left-footed players who can probably play in those kind of roles. I'd probably counter that. Is there really? I can't think of that many. And the other thing is that we know Arteta and Edu seem to really love Premier League proven players. They've signed so many Premier League proven players.
Yeah,
they're doing it almost repeatedly. And if you look at the three players that we've been talking about this window, these are all Premier League players, right? And they obviously see that as a premium. So maybe that is one of the things that they look at. And I feel like he is the kind of player that needs a coach to just reinvigorate him. There's obviously some class and talent there. So I'll be honest, I'm cool with this. I am really cool with the idea of us signing Kai Havertz. I think that it probably sounds like I'm being overly optimistic as an Arsenal fan. Like I do very much drink the Arteta Edu Kool-Aid, and much of that has been because they've been, they haven't given us much reason to doubt them recently. I feel if they're willing to go spend that money on a player like that, then I think the rationale is probably there, and Arteta probably looks at him and thinks, I can do something with this guy. I can take him to another level. Again, good age, really good age. He's got that time on his side. We get him on a long contract. Again, when it comes to finances, I'm not so concerned at that age. Give him a 5-year contract or so if you can, spread it over. I think it'll be okay. So and then maybe you can sell him on if it works out, if it doesn't, whatever. So all of that, I'm not so concerned about. It has massively taken me by surprise, but I'll be pretty pleased if we do it, to be honest.
I think there's something quite exciting about taking a player who's flopping at a rival and turning him into like a world beater.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen that often, though, and that's the problem. Usually when a player isn't doing that well, it's very rare that you just turn them around that quickly, and the demands on him will be very intense very quickly. So that's the downside. That's the risk. But you're right. I think, but we say it's a risk.
We're a very loving fan base, though. When you say that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't think we're the sort of fan base that will turn on him. We'll be very supportive.
No. Yes, but I can see a situation where it does turn ugly. Like if he has a season like Vieira's had this season, I think people will turn on him, because this isn't a first season Vieira type player. This is a player who's been in the Premier League for 3 years.
That's true.
And we've probably paid a fairly decent chunk of money for him. And I think a lot of it will depend on the fee. Like if we get him for, let's say, 30 million or something, that's a very different proposition to if we signed him for 60 million.
But again, why should we care? Like, do you know what I mean? Why should we care?
I think psychologically, as Arsenal fans, we love doing transfer. We love being transfer accountants, right? And
I know, yeah.
What people will say is, because we paid 60 million for Kai Havertz, we couldn't buy Caicedo, and or even worse, we paid 60 million for Havertz, and it allowed Chelsea to go and then buy Caicedo.
Yeah, I get you.
And people will remember that. And there might be an element of truth in that. I don't know. Like you do give Chelsea good money, that you get them out of the hole, right? And I think if we're strategic about this, we wait, right? We have no need to do this deal quickly. We wait till Chelsea are in a tricky financial situation where, look, we wait till the 30th of June and we pick up the phone there and say, I'm going to give you 15 quid for Kai Havertz. And but
do you get the same issue though, right? Like if it gets that low, then other, we're led to believe that Real Madrid are the other main interested party.
Yeah, but I don't think, put it this way, if Kai Havertz ends up going to Real Madrid, I won't be as annoyed as if, for example, Declan Rice goes to Man City.
Yeah, but I think my point is, we have a legitimate path to signing Havertz as opposed to him joining Real Madrid if we're willing to perhaps pay that little bit extra. But if we go down to, if we go down to your bargaining route, like you say, and we start dropping it below, get down to, I don't know, even that 40 million range. Yeah. I think I can see Real Madrid going, oh, hang on a minute, I'll have some of that.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe. I think it's all about, like, can we sell him the dream? Look, I think Real Madrid can sell a very, very attractive dream too. Right?
Yeah.
But
if he's got those two clubs to choose from, I reckon, he goes Real Madrid, right? Like it's not even, because it's not even like, it's not, I don't know what Arteta will tell him, but clearly, apparently he's interested in the project and wants to join. I know what Arteta's told him then, but I'm sure Arteta hasn't told him, listen, you're going in and you're going to start for me every game. Like, that's not going to happen. Unless he's signing Havertz as a number 8, and we're looking at a Rice and Havertz like central midfield combo, like that it blows my mind slightly. I'm not sure if Havertz has got a good history of playing a number 8. Prash did tell me, a Chelsea fan, that they tried to play him at number 8 and it was not good. So
no, I don't remember playing in that role.
Yeah,
I've always, like you said, seen him in more of a right-sided role. When I've ever seen him up top as a number 9, I've always thought this guy doesn't really look like he should be playing there. But look, I think the other thing is, and we've talked about this before, which is, I think we're moving more and more to this Man City model of not having a first 11 and a second 11. And you've said this quite a few times, Raj, which is this notion of like the backup number 10 or the backup striker or the backup midfielder isn't going to exist. And that's the idea, is like, we won't have a Premier League squad and we won't have a Europa League squad. We will have 16, 17, 18 players that will play. And it doesn't matter, because you're going to go from Champions League to Premier League to Champions League to Premier League to a big FA Cup game. Yeah, in the League Cup, you can play the second string players, but you're going to need to rotate. And actually, with that rotation comes tactical changes as well. And I think Arteta will probably have to really think hard about the systems that we play and how we adapt, because you can play. There's, even if, let's say, we did get Declan Rice, we don't know. Like, maybe we change the system. Like, where does Thomas Partey and Declan Rice fit in this system, right? How does that work with Martin Odegaard? How does that work with this? If we sign a wide player, how does that work with Saka, with Martinelli, with Trossard? There are, like you said, we were expecting one thing, and all of a sudden we rock up with Ben White at right back, right? And now, like, towards the end of the season, we play Kiwior at left back. So I think we will become far more tactically flexible. And I think what we've been doing is signing players who can play in at least 2 positions. And when you can do that, it means that actually you get a lot more games. And because you can maybe like pay Ben White. Ben White's the classic type, right? We can play Ben White at left back, right back. We can play Ben White at centre back. Tomiyasu, again, we signed him because he can play left back, right back, centre back. with Kiwior, another player we thought, was he go centre back, left back, apparently even defensive midfield.
Yeah.
Rice is a very similar player. So I think Trossard very similar. Jesus can play centre back, centre back, up front, play the right. Maybe he can play centre back at one point. So things will change, right? And there was a really good article by what's his name, Lewis Ambrose, right, who writes for Arsblog sometimes, and he basically compared our squad in the minutes they played to Man City, and it was like basically we had like 5 players that played more than 25 games or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Man City never had no one that basically played that many games or like that frequently or something like that, or had very few. Whereas we had a lot of players that played between something like 5 and 8 games last year. But Man City also didn't have that many players. What they instead have is a big chunk of players that play between 10 and 20 games a season.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Because they don't have a first 11. Yes, they play Haaland every game, but apart from Haaland, everyone else can just rotate in, out, Champions League, Premier League, and they get rested and they don't burn out by April. We played basically the same 11 every time they were fit because they're good, but also because we had no squad to rotate with.
Yeah.
So if you do have a Havertz, if you do have a Declan Rice, and that pushes someone good onto the bench, if you have I don't know who else we'll get, but these players we should be signing every player with you will play 15, 20 games, except when you sign maybe a 17, 18-year-old, like that's you're a League Cup player. Like when we signed, what's his name? What's that guy who went to Norwich?
Marquinhos.
Yeah, Marquinhos, right? He was never going to play 20 games a season, but he, I think that's the idea. So, and with that will mean tactical flexibility. So I wouldn't be surprised if we rock up with Jesus, and then maybe let's say we sign Havertz plays behind Jesus, and we change the midfield around a bit. Or maybe we move Jesus out to the right and play Havertz as a false 9 or something like that. So I don't think we should assume anything with the system for the first game of the season.
Agree. Totally agree. It's funny because by the time we release it, I mean, there's obviously we're going out live in this episode, but by the time the audio pods get released tomorrow or whenever they do, by the time people listen to this show, the pace things have gone today. Who knows what the stories are going to be tomorrow? We may have dropped out of the bloody Declan Rice deal by this time tomorrow. Who knows? We may have signed him. So there's going to be a lot to talk about for the next coming weeks. I look forward to reflecting on more when it happens. Very quickly, I don't want to spend too long on it because we've had a long episode and a fantastic, really enjoyable chat with you, Aaron. But let's talk about fixtures very briefly because the fixture list came out today. And we don't have to forensically deep dive in the fixtures, but what were the biggest take homes for you? I suppose the real headline is our opening day. We don't open on Friday night away like we have done for the last couple of seasons. We instead are playing on Saturday morning, like 12:50 Saturday morning, the early kickoff on Saturday, home to Nottingham Forest. How do you feel about that, and how do you feel about the fixtures generally?
Yeah, it's always fun. I think opening game is nice. It's a shame it's an early Saturday kickoff. It would have been nice if that was a Saturday 3:00 or a 5:30 game, but we will be the first game on the new TNT Sports, which I think will be interesting. No idea if that's going to be any good or not. Then we've got a pretty decent August, like Nottingham Forest, Crystal Palace, and Fulham. That's good. The interesting bit then is that in September and October we play Man United at home, Spurs at home, and Man City at home, which means because of that we have a lot of big away games in the second half of the season. And you look at how the away games we finish with, we have City away in March, then we have Brighton away, Wolves away, Spurs away, Man United away at the end of the season. So those away games, and we don't, and I know games will get moved around and things might, change, and this is always very hard to judge. And if we're still in with a Champions League shout, like I think someone analysed the fixtures, and after every group stage game in the Champions League, we're at home, which is great. But what that probably means is that in February, March, April, when we have two-legged Champions League ties, hopefully, we're probably going to be away because there's a lot of away games in that second half of the season. I'm looking at the fixtures now. We've got West Ham away and Burnley away back-to-back in February. We've got your Wolves and Spurs away back-to-back in April. So there's going to be some tricky away games. But we finish with Bournemouth, Man United and Everton. So, yeah, that should be good. I'm looking forward to the new season. It's always exciting when you get those fixtures in your calendar and you can just start planning things, and it should be good.
Really is. I think the slightly pessimistic side of me feels like, when you've got all those home games at the beginning and you've got those tough away games in the second half, it does put yourself under quite a lot of pressure to get to Christmas in a pretty good position, or get to the new year in a pretty good position, right? Like if Arsenal are like, I don't know, sitting in, let's just say, fourth place, by the end of the year, you would worry a little bit about the second half of the season, wouldn't you? And I think the other thing is Tottenham away around that period when it's giving me really scary deja vu vibes from when we failed to finish fourth the season before last. It was around that same time, wasn't it, going into the last few games of the season, going to Spurs away. So I am ultimately, if we are going to be fighting for if we're going to be fighting for the Premier League or top four or whatever, in those final few games of the season, it will matter. Like the Spurs game will matter. The Man United game will matter. Like surely they will matter for something. That is making me nervous already.
Yeah.
But I am very much looking forward to
it. Yeah. I'm just trying to think. Like there's always like these little themes I look at, right? The first thing you do is like, when it's Spurs, when it's Man United, who's first, who's last. Then I always look at Christmas as something that I find very interesting. And we've got Anfield, Liverpool away on the 23rd of December, which is going to be tricky. And Christmas is generally okay. Like we've got West Ham and Fulham in between Christmas and New Year. Then there's cup games, and then January is pretty kind. I think the one good thing is there's no, like, I think last season we looked at that run we had when we had, like, was it Chelsea, Man City, Spurs? There's no horror run of fixtures back to back as it stands, where we have more than like two games that are tricky. Like every difficult game is generally followed by a relatively okay game. The only one which is March, where we've got Chelsea at home and then Man City away, but then you've got Luton after that. And also we have no idea which teams are going to be good. Like, I think Forest at home, you assume Forest will be okay, but they could go and sign another 10 good players like in the window, right? Similarly, like Chelsea, Liverpool, Man United, Brighton, Brentford, like all these clubs, like, will they be good? Will they be bad? Who knows? Villa, Everton, like the league just gets more and more competitive every year. Newcastle, we haven't talked about Newcastle. Like the league gets more and more competitive every year. And actually, I think that's probably better for us, because the thing that really screwed us over last year was no one was able to come close and take points off City. And basically, in the last 3 months of the season, City just won because they were just so much better than everyone else. And I think we would benefit from a more competitive league, because I think we will drop points to teams around us. And if other teams do, that's okay. And it kind of brings them closer to us.
Agreed, mate. Cool. Well, that's our initial reflections on the fixtures anyway. Those horror runs that you sort of alluded to, I hope don't develop when fixtures get moved around. But, it is what it is. We're going to have to accept, if we're playing in the Champions League, we can't have it both ways. We're playing in the Champions League, it's going to be hard. It's just the way it is. But we'd rather be in this situation anyway, right? And I think that just compounds the fact that we, doing these big deals for big players, we just need to get our squad in that position where we can compete. So Wicked. All right, mate. Well, look, good chatting to you, and it was great to do another pod after a little break. Hopefully, the next pod we do will have an element of a squad review to it. We'd like to do an episode where we'll go through the squad and figure out who are the players that we think we might want to sell or loan out. And hopefully we won't leave that episode too long, because otherwise some of those players will have probably already left.
Yeah.
So yeah, watch this space. I say that, and I just checked on Twitter just before we closed, and the story which I've just read, which was Dharmesh Sheth from Sky Sports, is reporting that Inter Milan looking to sign Florian Balogun and are expected to
sign him like permanently.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah,
that's we should have a very big conversation on Balogun. I've got some views,
thoughts.
Yeah,
okay. Look forward to that.
We'll save that for another day.
Excellent, Aaron, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much. See you soon.
Good night, everyone, and thank you for listening. Please like, share. Please like, subscribe, share, share, all those things. Please do those things.
Please
really
do.
appreciate it. Thank you all. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.